What is up, hustlers? Today I have Naresh Vissa on the show with me today. So Naresh is an employee turned entrepreneur, and he is also an author featured in many magazines. So Naresh has a very special story. He started hustling at a very young age when he was still in college. And the best part is, he made more money than most 30, 40-year-olds when he was still in college, which is freaking amazing, right? So his consultancy business has been his primary source of income for 4 years now. And when he started this, he was immediately making 20% more than what he was paid during his first job, which was amazing. And he's also a prolific author, podcaster, and he has published 5 different books about marketing, and podcasting, and also writing. So his bestsellers are 50 Shades of Marketing and also Podcastnomics, which are the best books in their field. So guys, are you interested to know more about Naresh's story? If you are, stay tuned to the end of this episode. And a message before we begin, HUSTLR has officially started offering agency services, and we specialize in high performance web design and development. We make your website load lightning fast, and we also do search engine optimization that includes on-page optimization and also link building. We also help with content creation if you need help in those areas. And lastly, and this is the most exciting one, which is conversion-driven advertising with Facebook and Google, for all of your e-commerce needs. So if you need help in any of these areas, send me an email at jeremy@hustler.com and I will be in touch with you, okay? Hey Naresh, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. So let's start by introducing yourself and what you do a little bit.
It's a pleasure to be on, Jeremy, and I am the founder and CEO of Krish Media Marketing. It's a full-service online and digital marketing agency. I started the company, we're coming up on 7 years. 2013 is when I started it. It initially started with just me offering a handful of services, and it's since gone on to grow and added more services. Like I said, we're a one-stop shop for online and digital solutions. So that's been my primary business for the past 7 years. And through that, I've gotten many great opportunities to partner and do some really cool things. Write several #1 best-selling books, come out or start a real estate investment company, and also been involved with some other projects that have failed, unfortunately, but they've still been great experiences nonetheless. So that's a little background about who I am, what I do, and my businesses.
Right. So tell me more about your business. How did it get started?
Well, I was working full-time at one of the largest financial marketing companies in the world. And that's where I learned about e-commerce, online and digital marketing, direct response marketing. I learned all those different fields while I was working full-time. And I left that company in 2013, started Krish Media Marketing. And my first clients became my former employer's competitors. So I had clients come through the door almost immediately. It's like I gave myself a 20% raise within 1 month of leaving.
And this was before you started a company before you left your job?
Yeah. So while I was working my job, I didn't incorporate the company, but I had, I guess you can call it like a side hustle or like a side business. I was just doing it to make some additional money on the side. And then, and that's what I always recommend people do. I always recommend that they start with the side hustle. They start with, they not quit their full-time job. They still work their full-time job, but they try to build something up on the side, and then they leave their full-time job when they're ready to take over that side hustle.
Right. Cool. I think that's great advice for people who have no experience with business but are looking into, starting their own company. So you mentioned that you started your foray into entrepreneurship even right out of college, and in one of the emails that we had.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. How did that happen?
Well, so the side hustle goes all the way. So you might be wondering, okay, I'm working a full-time job. How did I develop this side hustle? Well, it started when I was in college. I was a student. I interned at a financial radio station. So it was this radio station that had produced financial shows all around the country. And at the end of my internship, it was a paid internship. So they paid me. It was like a job. And at the end, they said, look, while you're in school, why don't you contract out to us? Because they were really impressed with my work and my ability to deliver for the company. So I said, all right, that sounds good to me. I put in maybe 10 hours a week, around 10 hours a week, contracting out work for them. And so they became my first client. That one client turned into 2 clients, and it turned into three clients, and it turned into 4 clients. And I was servicing all these different clients while I was still in school studying. And then I went and got a master's degree. Same thing. It was just kind of like, I loved doing it and I was getting paid money. I never thought, okay, I'm eventually going to turn this into a business. It was always a side hustle, because even while I was working full time, I worked on Wall Street for a household bank. I worked, I told you, the financial marketing company. So I had full-time jobs, and this was just kind of a side thing. So I decided to pursue that whole side venture. And initially it was like a 2-month experiment. Then that 2 months became 1 year. And then that 1 year became now 7 years.
7 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so so you mentioned in the beginning it was you were interning with a digital radio station, and then word of mouth got out, and then that's what got you your clients then, right?
It wasn't really word of, I guess. So my first client was that radio station. Then one of the employees at that company left to go to a different company. So when that happened, that new company which ended up being CNN, they became a client of mine. And then at the time, CNN had a bunch of radio stations. This was 11 years ago. So CNN radio had like 3 or 4 shows that I was producing for. So each one of those shows became a client as well. And so I don't want to say word got out, and that's how it was actually, I did a good job at what I was doing. And then when really important people left to go somewhere else, they kind of took me, like, figuratively, because I was still in school. It's not like I traveled anywhere or anything. I was still like doing all this from my dorm room in college, but they figuratively took me wherever they went. And I've kind of noticed over the long haul, that's just super common, where you develop relationships with people and then they move on somewhere else, and they kind of bring you with them.
Right. So what kind of work do you do for your initial clients mostly?
I was producing radio shows. So I was doing content generation. At the time, social media was relatively new. So I was managing their online marketing and social media. And then I was also doing production work. So I was editing shows and also booking. The most important thing was booking guests, kind of like, you have your own show here and you probably book your own guests, but I was booking like big name people onto these shows. And that guest booking kind of skill set has continued, because once podcasting came up I started working in podcasting in 2011. Once that came up, then all of a sudden all these podcasts were like, oh, I want you to book guests for my shows. And so that's a huge revenue driver for my company, Krish Media Marketing. It's podcast production and monetization. It's not just how to start, launch, and produce a podcast properly, but how to make money, and also the production side, booking guests, content generation, getting heavy hitting celebrities or experts in whatever field the podcast is in.
Right. So what kind of tips do you have as a fellow podcaster? I'm curious, like what kind of do you have a secret or anything like that?
Well, I think the first thing is, as a podcaster, you have to have a business model. Unless you just want to do it for fun. Look, if you just want to do it for fun because you're bored, okay, go ahead and podcast. But if you actually want to make headway, develop a following, get more listeners, leverage those listeners into dollars and cents, well, you have to have a proper business plan. And so the first thing is promoting and marketing your podcast properly. So that means getting on all the podcast networks. So not just the Apple Podcasts or iTunes, but there's so many now out there. There's iHeartRadio, there's TuneIn, there's Stitcher, there's Player.fm, there's Google Play. There's so many. You got to get everywhere because each one of these platforms has so many users. And there was just an article that came out, I think, yesterday about how Spotify is now get extremely active in podcast or in distributing podcasts because they're getting so many new users to use their platform because they want to listen to podcasts through Spotify. And so then what Spotify is able to do is attract those people. They're taking other people's shows, putting them on their platform, and then what they're doing is trying to sell them premium subscriptions to Spotify Premium. So as a podcaster, you want to be on all these different places. Then I wrote a number one best-selling book called Podcastnomics, the book of podcasting to make you millions. And in that book, I lay out kind of a marketing cheat sheet on what podcasters should do. I mean, what I shared with you are probably 2 strategies, but there are other things like transcriptions, transcribing your episodes, turning those transcriptions into blog posts, because that's going to help with search engine optimization, getting heavy hitting guests on your show, because then they can share the interview with their social networks. It's also great SEO for you. So many tips like this in my book, Podcastnomics. But those are, on the marketing side, those are really important. And then on the monetization side, there are 3 primary revenue drivers. There's advertising, there's advertising, there's subscriptions, and there is the podcast serving as a loss leader to essentially sell an existing product. So those are the 3 primary revenue drivers. And that last one that I told you is really where you're going to make the big bucks. It's if you already have an existing product or service that you can sell, and using the podcast, like I said, as a loss leader, as a lead generator to sell those products or services. So podcasters need to think through these 3 primary revenue drivers and then plan accordingly.
Right. So how do you assume that I don't know anything about podcasting, right? How would you advise people to grow their audience to a significant amount? Like 1,000 listeners for each episode, for example.
Yeah, well, I already shared a few of those strategies with you, the SEO stuff. But if you want to get even more granular on how you can grow the listenership even more, well, the next strategy that I would share would be going on other podcasts. So doing what I called commingled swap interviews, where you interview one podcaster on your show, and in return, you go on their show and they interview you on their show, because now you're being exposed to their audience and you are exposing them to your audience, and you're essentially cross-promoting each other. So that's certainly another strategy. But then part of this is understanding how Apple Podcasts works, because Apple Podcasts is still the largest, most successful podcast platform out there. And so the first step in trying to build an audience is having a niche. And so podcasting is what I call niche broadcasting. You have mainstream broadcasting like CNN and Fox and all these news networks. They're just very generic, general interest, general topics. In the case of podcasting, you can get extremely granular, extremely niche. So you want to become an early mover in a niche. So a niche would be like NBA basketball or Michael Jordan's shoes or women's tennis, women's professional tennis, or to get off some sports topics, like Tesla cars. Those would be very specific niche topics that where you could really dig down deep into a subject area and develop a following of really passionate people. Whereas CNN, Fox, the places that I mentioned earlier, they don't have the bandwidth or the airtime to give such niche topics that type of exposure. They just can't, because there's too much or too general. And so when you start a podcast, you want to be an early mover in a niche. You don't want to be competing with ESPN or CNN or Fox, because they already hold that market share, but you can kind of create your own market in a niche area. So that's really the first step. But then once you launch your podcast, another strategy that I have, which generates free advertising for you on all these platforms, especially Apple Podcasts, that's releasing frequent content early on in the process. The more content you pump out as soon as you launch your podcast, the longer it's going to be featured on the new and noteworthy sections on these podcast platforms. So when you come out with your podcast, you want to make sure that you front load the episodes, because that's when you're essentially getting free advertising from these platforms. And when you're getting free advertising, you don't want to run out of episodes. You want to keep coming out with more content. So that's going to really boost up listenership early on, and hopefully you can sustain yourself. But then the next thing is actually having a separate website that's going to help with your search engine optimization. So many podcasts don't even have websites. They use whatever their hosting provider or RSS feed or Apple Podcasts. They use whatever they're given for free. But no, you need your own website where you own the domain name so that you can capture leads and publish your podcast and people can find it through Google. It's just so important, because too many podcast managers, they just publish their shows on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, and then they do nothing else. The entire point of Apple Podcasts and all these platforms is that you can bring in new leads, and the only way you can bring in those leads is by getting them to visit your site, something that you own, and converting that traffic into, let's say, an email address or a phone number, most likely an email address, so that now you have that direct connection. So publishing episodes on a website gives listeners a chance to listen to episodes in a different way, because not everyone likes iTunes. Not everyone likes Spotify or TuneIn or Stitcher. So again, I could keep going. There's so many of these in my book, Podcastnomics, the book of podcasting to make you millions. And I'll even offer your listeners a free copy of the book if they go to my website, nareshvissa.com, and get on my mailing list. Contact me through the site, and I'll send them a free copy of the book.
Cool. Thank you so much, man. I think it's definitely helpful, with your experience in the podcasting industry. And I know a lot of people who are looking to start podcasts these days. Apparently, Spotify, they're getting about 30,000 shows every single month getting uploaded, but most of them die within the month, apparently, because I don't think they know how to do it properly. So I appreciate, I thank you on behalf of my listeners for, that free copy of the book. So I'll be putting your URL at the show notes later on. So, okay, let's get back to you. Let's talk about you even more, What were some of the lessons that you've learned over the last few years, as an entrepreneur?
Oh man, there are too many. I don't even know where to begin. It's such a broad lesson or such a broad question because there are just so many lessons. But
what are some of the biggest ones? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is the four keys to success as an entrepreneur are: number one, skills; number two, focus; number three, leverage; and number four, value creation. And so let's break down each one of those let's break down each one of those kind of commandments. We can call them the four commandments to entrepreneurship. Number one, I said, was skills. And so as an entrepreneur, you need skills. It's not good enough to just have ideas in your mind, because to execute ideas, you need to know those basic technical, hard, and soft skills. You need to know how to write. You need to know how to communicate. You need to know how to sell. You need to know how to use a computer. You need to know how to use email well. You need to know how to use so many different technologies, not just on the computer, but now on mobile apps, tablets. There are just so many skills that you need to learn. I mean, I can keep going on and on and on about these skills that you need to know: how to code, how to use an email service provider. People don't even know if you don't even know what an email service, what an ESP is, well, then you need to develop that skill of even coming up with that idea. So the first thing is, skills are today's currency. It's not your college degree or your master's degree or your PhD or law degree or whatever. Maybe that was the case like 20 years ago, but today, skills are the currency in the marketplace. If you can offer skills to build something noteworthy, then that's really the first step in entrepreneurship. It's not good enough, but it's a first step. Then we go to focus.
Sorry, Naresh, before we jump into focus, let's talk about some of the skills that you value the most right now. Like, what kind of skills do you think people
I already named a lot of skills, and I value all of them, because they're all, I think the most important skills you can have in today's age, in the 21st century, have to do with tech skills. So the ability to get in front of a computer and create a financial model on Microsoft Excel, or knowing how to use Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Office, PowerPoint, Word properly. Or in my case, growing my company. How do I grow my company? I hire people. So the skill of finding people. How are you going to find people? And how are you going to hire them? How are you going to pay them? How are they going to be compensated? How are you going to retain them? These are all skills, and you have to develop these skills. But the technology is what has allowed us to do all of these things, including hiring. It's all part of technology, because almost everything that I do is through technology. My computer is my bread and butter. So in my opinion, the tech skills are what will really, no matter what industry you're in, if you have the tech skills, then kind of the sky is the limit.
Right. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah.
Yep. And then, so now I move on to focus. So focus really consists of two things. Focus is not what listeners and kind of the layman might think. Focus is just thinking properly, concentrating. No, focus is, number one, focus is focusing on what matters most. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, I have a digital marketing agency. Well, you don't see me going around trying to clean toilets or trying to learn how to clean toilets or build backyards, because my focus is on the digital marketing agency. So it's important to, as an entrepreneur, you have all these different ideas, but no, look, if you have a good idea, you have to focus on that idea. Well, the second part of focus is focusing on the right thing. There's so many companies, so many founders who they have this great product and they're not focusing properly on marketing it correctly. They might be doing the wrong thing. So you can absolutely focus on something, but you might be focusing on the wrong thing. And so it just kind of goes back to working smart, not working hard, but working smart. Focus really at the end of the day is working smart. Because look, everybody works hard. The guy working at McDonald's at the cash register, he works hard. He wakes up early in the morning. Everyone works hard, right? Working hard is not good enough. Working hard is actually a deterrent. We're taught work hard. No. You got to work smart. If you work smart, that's how you separate yourself from everybody else. This concept that people have, oh, work hard and good things will happen. It's not true, because I know so many people who worked really, really hard and good things did not happen because they didn't have the focus. They were not focusing on the right things. If they focused on the right thing and didn't work as hard, they probably would have done better or made it, but they didn't do that. So that's what I mean by focus. Then the next thing is, do you have any follow-up questions to that?
Yes, focus. I do. Like I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding the difference between the focus on important things and the right thing. Like, don't they essentially mean the same thing, sort of?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But what I mean is, people think that just because you're putting in the hours that you're focusing, you can work for 10 hours and be focusing on the wrong thing.
Right.
And so that's not focus. Focus is focusing on the right thing, because that's going to produce the results that you're looking for. That's focus.
Right. So I'm assuming you practice the 80-20 rule. You focus on the 20%.
That's a perfect example.
Right.
That's a perfect example. So let's talk about the 80-20 rule. 80% of your business is going to come from 20% of your customers. So focus on that 20%, because they're the bulk of your business. So focus on that 20% and try to grow that 20% so that ultimately you can get 100% of your business becoming really high quality clients. But the 80-20 rule is essentially the concept of focus quantified into 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers.
Right. Okay. Clear. So let's move on to the third point, leverage, right?
Leverage, yes. So leverage, this is, again, similar to focus, because focus has a couple of different meanings that I talked about. Leverage is also has a couple of different meanings. So let's start with leverage in just as a business person. Leverage is the concept of, it's really the concept of a business person being able to determine his or her future. The goal is to gain as much leverage as one can so that they can call the shots. And so to give you examples of leverage, in my case, Krish Media Marketing, I'm at a stage where I have a lot of clients coming to me, a lot of leads come to me saying, hey, so-and-so told me about this service that you offer. Can you do it for us? I mean, every week I get an inquiry, 50 inquiries a year, right? People who are referred to me. And that right there is leverage. It's the ability for me to be like, you know what? I'm really lazy this week. I don't really want to answer your email. I don't really want to work with you. I just want to be lazy. I don't care about the money. That's leverage. And I'd never do that. I try to take on as many clients as I can. Sometimes they're just not a good fit, but that's also leverage. When they're not a good fit and you say, hey, you know what, you're just not a good fit, we can't take you on, that's leverage. So you want to build yourself and your business up to the point to where you're calling the shots and you have the power and the control, and they're the ones coming to you. Most businesses that start, it's the opposite. They're going out, they hire salespeople, marketing people, and they're trying to promote themselves and their services. And that's, it's kind of an uphill battle. But once you build up that leverage, like what Apple has or what McDonald's has or what Walmart has, they have leverage. And that's why people keep going there. No one's forcing people to go to McDonald's and eat their really unhealthy food. No, they've built up so much leverage that people just want to do it. That's good for them. So that's what I mean by leverage, because once you build up leverage, then not only can you call the shots, but you can dictate terms and you can cross promote, and you just have a lot of trust that you've built up, and really the sky's the limit after that.
Right. So it sounds like leverage is something that you have to build over time, and it doesn't just happen, overnight, right? It takes a lot of trust, a lot of relationship building and stuff like that before you can have leverage. So what are the best ways? I'm not sure if this is the right question, but what are some best ways to create leverage?
You know what? I'm not really sure I have a specific recipe or answer to that question, simply because there's so many different strategies and different ways that you can create leverage. In my case, I can tell you what's worked for me. I've written several #1 best-selling books that have established my credibility as a business person and as an expert on e-commerce and online and digital. So that has given me a lot of leverage. You go on Amazon, you see all the reviews, you see how the sales are doing, and it's like, oh wow, that's pretty impressive. But then there are other things where if you can build up your business, so once you get into a situation to where you're not that guy knocking on people's doors begging people to buy your product, but instead you're able to just build up your business, hire people, and get your revenue up, well, that's the best way to build leverage. It's focusing on yourself and your business and growing it, because as it continues to get bigger and bigger, that leverage kind of builds up and up naturally. So there are a lot of different ways to build it, but these are just a couple of examples.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Because as a company grows, it has more gravity as well. Like people flock to you somewhat.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the last point is value creation, right?
So the last point is, yes, it's value creation. And this kind of goes, it's somewhat similar to the skills, the skills section, because at the end of the day, people only buy something if it's adding value to their lives. So why do people go eat at McDonald's? Because the food is adding value to their lives. The food tastes really good to them. Why do people go to Walmart? Because the grocery item, the stuff at Walmart is a lot cheaper than they are at Target or some other store. And so people feel value because they're saving money. Mm-hmm. So whereas, how about Apple? People see value in Apple because they have some really good high quality products that make their lives easier and make their work easier. So in the case of being an entrepreneur, you have to create value that's why I say value creation. You have to create value for your potential customers. So think about everything that you own, anything that you buy, it's creating, people lose sight of this. It's really surprising to me, but you can't lose sight of value creation. You want to come out with a product or a service that's going to help you. So in the case of Krish Media Marketing, my company, we provide value because we offer services that companies just don't have in-house. They may not, big companies have it, but a lot of companies may not have these services in-house. So they outsource it to us and we handle their online and digital needs. On top of that, we provide even better value because we charge lower rates than the market. And when we charge lower rates, people feel like they're getting a good deal. They're getting a great value because what they would have paid somebody else, it would have been 2 to 3 times the amount. Or if they had a full-time employee, I mean, they're paying us a fraction of that full-time employee. So we are providing value by creating a good service or providing a good service, and also charging much lower prices than helping them save on bucks.
Right. Do you have any examples to share where, entrepreneurs they lose sight on this value creation point? Like any real life examples to share?
Oh, there's so many examples. So many examples. I remember one of my business ideas many years ago was creating a like environmentally friendly roof for, just for like houses and schools and stuff. And I was like, this is really environmentally friendly, and this is, this would be good. It's good for the environment. And then I realized as I started pitching the idea, it didn't create value for anybody, because people were like, why would I want to get this roof? Like, what are the benefits of it outside of it, quote unquote, being environmentally friendly? Like, how is it gonna, what if there's a major hurricane or tornado? Like, how is it gonna survive that? Like, and if you make it strong enough, well, again, how is it helping me? Like, how is it better than the other roofs? And so I just didn't think that idea through. I just was like, oh, let's have some kind of green, environmentally friendly roof, without thinking through that value creation side. And another example is a lot of these for-profit companies that try to do charity work, they try to do like nonprofit work. Well, what kind of value are you creating there? Because you're not solving people's needs. Like, people don't need to donate. When I wake up in the morning and I go through my day-to-day habit, my day-to-day lifestyle, my rituals, I drink water, I eat food, I exercise, I drive my car. Nowhere is there anything about donating money or charity or anything like that. Now, that doesn't mean charity isn't important. And at the end of the year, when I'm closing my books, when I have money left over, I talk to my accountant and I say, okay, how much money can I donate to charity? And he gives me a number, and then I'll be able to allocate it to charity that way. But again, it's not creating value. Creating a business where people are, being charitable, for-profit business, it's not creating value. And that's why you don't see any of these for-profit businesses that get into the nonprofit space. None of them do well. I mean, you probably haven't even heard of any of them, simply because if you want to do nonprofit stuff, then start a nonprofit. Absolutely, go ahead and do it. I support you in doing it. But if you're trying to be a profitable business by doing nonprofit work, you're never going to get anywhere. You're never going to get anywhere because you're not creating the value that people need or that people are looking for.
Are you talking about some of those, PR stunts where, some people, they say, oh, for every bowl of, acai berry you buy, we'll donate $1 to XXX.
Yeah, so those PR stunts, they don't work. They don't work with people. People are more interested in the actual product. So like you said, if someone's selling like a acai bowl or whatever, and 10% goes to some charity, people aren't buying the acai bowl because they want to give they could give 100% of their money to the charity on their own. They don't need to buy an acai bowl for it to go to charity. Those PR stunts never work. They don't work. If you look at any of those, it's not directly related to the charity. Now, I remember there was after there was a huge hurricane, maybe 13 years back here in the United States, like 13, 14 years back, huge hurricane. And so a bunch of celebrities were like, let's throw this a basketball game. Let's like a celebrity basketball game, right? And so they sold tickets for people to attend this celebrity basketball game. And they sold out all the tickets and they raised a bunch of money. Well, look, in this case, they used the product to generate the sales. But the people actually, they didn't come out because they wanted to support the charity. They came out because they wanted to see all the celebrities playing the game. That's what got them to come out. Because again, if the people wanted to donate to the charity, then they could have just gone online and done it on their own, and they don't have to travel anywhere. But they were interested in seeing the players play. So the point that I'm making here is all those PR stunts where they're like, oh yeah, 20% goes to this charity and that charity. No one gives a crap about it. Most wealthy people, they wait until the end of the year to look at their tax documents.
It's more for tax optimization, isn't it?
Exactly. It's tax. They have their favorite charities, and at the end of the year, they donate to, and you can see a huge spike in donations in December of every year because of this concept. And so there's this huge misnomer. Part of it is kind of like this left-wing idea that the only way you can do good is by giving to charity or having something environmentally friendly. But in reality, the only way that you can do good is by creating a long-lasting, profitable business so that you can hire more people with that money and hire people and grow the business and hire more people. And when you employ people, you're putting money in their pockets so that they can feed their families, they can take care of themselves. That's the way that you do good, not by starting a business that's based off of donating money to the Ronald McDonald House. It's not going to work out.
Right. I think that's a very insightful and interesting view. So last question for you, Naresh, before we end this episode. So what are some of the goals that you've set for your company in the coming years? Just a little bit of accountability.
Well, in the case of Krish Media Marketing, I want us to continue our relationships with the staple of clients we have, but I also want us to expand, do more online special events, have bigger contracts with bigger companies over the long haul. So that's definitely in the pipeline, but then also on the real estate side, grow that real estate business from a 6-figure business to a 7-figure to 8-figure business within the next 5 years. And I think I'm on my way to doing that. So those are just kind of my short-term goals.
Right. Okay. I know I said last question, but can you tell me more about the online special events that you run?
Yeah. So I brought up podcasting, but we help companies run their online special events. So these are like online conferences, online webinars.
Right.
We handle everything from beginning to end. We take care of the technology. We set everything up. We do the marketing, the design, the pre-conference promotion, post-conference promotion, production during the event, you name it. We handle the entire process from soup to nuts. And these online special events we found them to be great lead generators and great ways to convert traffic into revenue.
Okay. So what about the real estate company? Can you be more specific at what you guys do?
Yeah, so that company is Krish Capital LLC. It's a startup, so there's no website yet. It's still kind of getting up and running. But right now, Krish Capital LLC, we manage a few $100,000, like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets. So not a lot right now, but it's cash flow positive right now. Actually, very much so cash flow positive, and doing quite well. A great way to preserve the wealth that I'm making through Krish Media and Marketing. And so real estate is just an awesome asset class, which I wish I was introduced to much earlier, but that's okay. And so it's just a great way to generate cash flow and not like I brought up earlier about working smart, and real estate is a really good way to work smart because you can generate good cash flow without really working much.
Right. Okay, cool. So I just want to say thank you for agreeing to do this, Naresh. So before we end this episode, is there anything else that you'd like to add on to our audience?
Again, that offer is still on the table. Go to my website, nareshvissa.com, get on my mailing list, contact me through there. I'll send you a free copy of my book, Podcastnomics. And go to Amazon, type in my name, Naresh Vissa, and you'll be able to see all my other books there as well.
Okay, guys, if you're interested, check it out on the link on the show notes. I'll be putting it there. So yeah, cool, man. Thanks for doing this, Naresh.
All right, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being on the show.
Okay, pleasure is mine. So let's keep in touch, okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.
So, Hustler Nation, that's the end of this episode. And if you enjoyed this episode and want to know more about starting and running a successful side hustle or business, check out the Hustler website at hustler.com. So we have a ton of free resources and guides to help you get started. And also, before you leave, I would also like to know what you think about this episode. And you can let me know by going to hustler.com/feedback. And I highly appreciate any feedback because I'm always trying to make this show better. So that's it for this episode. See you next week. Bye.